Well done steak has kind of been a taboo in Western food circles for a while now, but that's not the case in Asia. Whether it's a Hong Kong chachanteng or a Japanese yoshoku joint, or even a random Bangkok street steak, again and again you're greeted with some well done beef, but not chewy, still tender, and still tasty. So whether you personally like your steak a bit on the cook side, or you're just cooking for people that do, I do think that there's approaches here that we can all learn from, so that the well done lovers of the world don't have to suffer that proverbial hockey puck when they just want a hunk of beef. Of course, that modern Western conventional wisdom of medium at max didn't come from nowhere. So to make our well done steak, what we'll be leaning on today is a bit of Cantonese technique. Now, there's two primary directions that we can go here, which we'll call the chachanteng style, the most classic these days in Guangdong, together with what I'll label the old school soy sauce Western style, which is kind of an older, fancier approach that might just be a little more relevant internationally. For both, though, for the cut, what you're looking for is actually kind of the opposite of what's prized in the West. See, a thick steak overcooks by the time the center is no longer pink, so your goal here is thinness. In Guangdong, a common approach is to lightly beat the steak with the back of a knife to break it up a touch, and then slap the thing thin. That said, if you have something really thick on your hands, another option would also be to butterfly in the Western style, but either way, try to aim for something about a half-inch thick. Second, for the beef itself, generally speaking, for a well-done steak, the best bet is to go as fatty as you can. Ribeye, strip loin, that sort of thing. That said, for that chachanteng style, something cheaper, leaner, and tougher like top round might actually be preferable because we'll be beating that toughness into absolute submission, which we'll get to in just a sec. Because that third bit here is, of course, marination. While it's not strictly mandatory, just like how a chicken breast benefits from a good brine, so does a well-done steak. To make a soy sauce Western-style brine, just toss 2 cups of water to a pot together with 2 tablespoons salt, 2 tablespoons sugar, a couple cloves of smashed garlic, about an inch of smashed ginger, 3 dried bay leaves crumpled up, about an eighth of sliced onion, a half tablespoon of peppercorns, 2 tablespoons Shaoxing or alternatively white wine, and a tablespoon of soy sauce. Bring that up to a simmer to dissolve that salt and let that cool down to room temperature. Then just slide in your steaks and let those brine for at least a couple hours. All that said, I do know that in the West, these days, dry brining is a much more popular technique in home kitchens and also totally works. I do personally enjoy that hit of aromatics from a wet brine, but there's no arguing the convenience of a dry. Just a good sprinkle of salt and sugar on both sides, then onto a rack and into the fridge. On the other hand, compared to that pretty conservative dry brine, a chachanteng marinade is practically the polar opposite. It's a way to transform cheap beef into something tasty, so it can get pretty heavy-handed. To make it, first toss in a half teaspoon of salt, together with a teaspoon of sugar to your steak, and add in 2 tablespoons of water. Massage that in until the water's basically absorbed, then toss in a teaspoon of oyster sauce, teaspoon dark soy sauce, teaspoon Shaoxing, a quarter teaspoon black pepper powder, half teaspoon cornstarch, dollop of Worcestershire, and massage that all in. Optionally also hit it with a couple dried bay leaves together with a few slices of onion. Massage that all in, and let that marinate for at least 3 hours and preferably overnight. Then, 45 minutes before cooking, we'll also be adding in a quarter teaspoon of this stuff, Chinese meat tenderizer powder. This is a mix of starch, sodium carbonate, and an enzyme called papain, and it's basically the nuke in your "how can I make this more tender" arsenal. If you can't find it, just swap for some sodium carbonate, or alternatively just include a half teaspoon baking soda in your initial marinade. Either way, go easy on the ingredient, because it can often work a little too well. Then, our final well-done component, sauce. Now, again, this isn't strictly mandatory, but more often than not, you do see these sorts of steaks sauced in a Cantonese context at least. Now, this isn't a sauce video, so we're going to be going the lazy route and just using a bit of Lee Kum Kee's black pepper sauce. You can also make this stuff yourself if you like, and we've got a video up here on the topic. But also, really, feel free to use whatever kind of sauce you're feeling. So, for us, we'll just be mixing a tablespoon of that together with a tablespoon of water, half tablespoon soy sauce, and a half teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, and setting that all aside. Now, just like you'd get from a cha-chan-tang or a street steak, we are going to be making a whole plate here. So let's try to prep everything else before charging forward with the beef, starting with the pasta. That said, before we get into it, I do know that a subset of you are probably already visibly angry at this whole idea of a ketchup sauce spaghetti. But just know that something like this definitely isn't our goal. In a Cantonese ketchup sauce, the ketchup gets cooked first, which significantly mellows the ingredient, which is why you probably don't immediately interpret something like a sweet and sour sauce or an American barbecue sauce as obviously ketchup-y. There's a few different styles of Cantonese ketchup sauce, though, so what we'll be doing today is our interpretation of our local street steak from back in Shunda. To make it, over a medium flame, toss in 3 tablespoons of lard to a pot and go in with half an onion finely minced. Fry that until it's lightly browned, about 5 minutes or so. Then toss in 100 grams of finely minced tomato. Quick fry, then swirl in 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine or whatever you have around. Cook until the wine's dissolved, about 2 to 3 minutes. Then toss in a couple smashed cloves of garlic together with a few dried bay leaves. Quick minute fry till fragrant, then toss in 5 tablespoons of ketchup together with 3 tablespoons of water. Let that bubble away for another 3 to 5 minutes or until you can kind of start to hear things frying once again. At that point, go in with 1 cup of water, 3/4 of a teaspoon salt, a teaspoon sugar, half teaspoon soy sauce, 1/4 teaspoon dark soy for color, and swap the flame to medium-high. Let that bubble away for about 15 minutes, or until it's reduced by about 2/3 and starts to look pretty tomato saucy. Then go in with a 1/4 teaspoon MSG, a 1/4 teaspoon white or black pepper, and then season to taste. I felt this also needed a touch more sugar, MSG, and pepper. Then just scoop that all out and reserve to mix in with your spaghetti. Then, besides that, the one thing that seems to unite all plates of steak the world over is an almost embarrassingly minuscule side of vegetable. Not sure why, but I'm not going to argue. So we'll just boil a hunk of corn together with a few florets of broccoli. 45 seconds for the broccoli and 3 minutes for the corn. And now we can finally cook our steak. So out of the brine or marinade or whatever, and if you opted for that wet brine, do give the thing a solid pat dry at first. Then, to fry, as always, first, long yao. Get your cast iron pan piping hot, shut off the heat, add in your oil, here just a thin schmear, and give the pan a swirl. Then, swap the flame to high and go in with your steak. At this thinness, it won't take too long for the steak to get up to temperature, probably about 2.5 minutes on each side to get to the requisite 65°C, and definitely use an instant read to remove the guesswork if you have one. Then just transfer that steak over for a rest, and while that's sitting, let's get the rest of the plate sorted. So, if using a hot plate like us, first just toss that over a burner and let that heat up over a high flame. Then, while that's going, on another burner, fry a bit of ham in with about a tablespoon of lard over a medium flame. And once it's fragrant, about a minute or two, scooch it up, let the oil drain, and reserve. Then, go in with some cooked spaghetti. This was 50 grams worth of dried pasta, and give that a quick stir fry, about 1 minute. Then go in with a 1/4 cup of your ketchup sauce and mix well. Drizzle in a slurry of a half teaspoon cornstarch mixed with a half tablespoon water. Quick mix and over to the hot plate. So then, once said hot plate's looking at a surface temperature of about 140 Celsius, toss on 1/8 of a sliced onion and place the steak on top. Then nestle the ketchup spaghetti in. Toss on the semi-superfluous vegetable. Top the pasta with the ham strips and the steak with the sauce. Optional garnish, why not? And with that, you've got yourself a tasty, well-done steak together with some ketchup sauce spaghetti.
So this belongs to the category of the old Cantonese soy sauce Western food. So steak in that category, it's a fancy thing. You only do it when you want to celebrate something or maybe at a date night, you can go have this. And then afterwards, you go to a Bingsat ice room to have some cold milk and red bean drinks or some shaved ice or some good old Cantonese tang shui sweet soups. And that will be a perfect day night. I know this is not like legit authentic Western food, but this is what we grew up with and what we love, and it always hits that great nostalgia feeling. So right, check out the recipe in the description box. A big thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon, and of course, subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.